Hey guys, I know I had a ZVT lined up to cast, but I had a game happen today that was insane. So it was literally a game where right after I was done playing it, there were several comments on the Twitch chat saying I had to cast it. Oh god, sorry for the spoiler, but I was going to spoil that in a moment anyways. I'm actually going to cruise through the first few minutes because this game's really long, as you can tell from that spoiler that was just there. I am the Zerg player in the lower left corner, Rekatan. In the upper right, we have Barcode. He's Grandmaster in all three races. One of the best players in the world. He has 40 or 50 accounts in Masters and a good 10 accounts in Grandmasters in all three ladders. So he's actually a really well-known player, very, very good with all races. So it's good to see. All right, let's go ahead and cruise through this early game here. 11 overpool, 11 overpool, 11 overpool. Gonna box my drones for a bit because we're just watching some 11 overpool. Our opponent is gonna go ahead and go pylon first, of course. Then Nexus first. There we go. Okay, so we've got a Nexus first from my opponent, and actually this is interesting. We'll go ahead and slow it down now. I like the way he opened because 11 overpool typically they scout it and they go, oh god, I can't Nexus first. But he actually knows the build. Knows the build perfectly. A couple things happened. First off, he probe scouted, which then prevented me from making 4 Zerglings. I only made 2. And then he sacrifices his probe and goes ahead and puts down a pylon. What this does is it buys him just enough time to safely get that Nexus first up. So I think this is actually one case where someone's proven that you can still go Nexus first versus 11 overpool. It just means you have to probe scout because in a very strange fashion that then makes me go 2 Zerglings rather than 4. And you have to pylon block to buy that time, otherwise 2 Zerglings get in and wreak tons of havoc in your mineral line with proper micro. So that was pretty cool on Barcode's part. Actually really liked that. And at the time that we played this out I didn't know he was Nexus first, but now that I watch it, that's actually pretty cool. So, he's got another probe here, just going to be snooping around looking for that third. There will be none to be found. My nat's down a little bit late, but again, since we're 11 overpool, we're not too terribly worried about that. Here's that later than usual gas that I'm starting to use more and more. So we're going to get to see me go up to 4 queens rather than just 3. Play it a little safer. Go into the mid-game a little less aggressively, but with much healthier economy. And I'm oversaturated because of that late hatchery, but that gets fixed momentarily. So it's kind of funny because the pylon block generally is something that no one does versus 11 overpool because you've already got Zerglings out. But in this case, it actually threw me off a bit. So that was pretty cool. The one thing is oftentimes I'll go straight for the pylon and ignore the probe, but since I had already gotten quite a few hits on the probe, I went ahead and chased him down, which gave the pylon more time to build. So that's interesting too. A lot of things that happened there that worked out really well for his Nexus first. Alright, so we're starting our layer. Timing is actually pretty good for how late we took our gas. I actually maybe should have taken that gas a little later. I'm wanting my layer to start around 6:45 or so. So to start it at 6:15 actually is indicative that I need to delay my gas a little longer. We may find, yep, there's some idle larvae. That's what I was afraid of. So, a little bit of a supply block here, but that's fixing momentarily. Right there. So yeah, actually we want our gas a little later. I actually was a little too eager with it. But we're going ahead and getting all this cleaned up. We've got our 4th queen. And we've got our 3rd and 4th gas saturating. Drone count should be pretty healthy by the time our infestation pit finishes. We're already up to 48. I'm going to keep it on drones just for a little bit so we can see where this drone count finishes up at. Our opponent Barcode going ahead and chrono boosting out a Void Ray. 1 Void Ray is fine. He's going to establish a little bit of map control. Anything more than that's going to be problematic. But there's nothing wrong with a Protoss player opening Void Ray versus this style of play. Alright, so we're at 50 drones. Don't yet have any information, but I'm going ahead and blindly putting down an extra spine and a spore. I feel this is really necessary these days because the metagame is so heavy on certain timings. Okay, now I'm getting some scouting. I see 3 gateways. Haven't yet spotted the Stargate though. Alright, let's see what we got in production. We got 12 more drones. That's going to top us out at 60. So that's perfect. I see the Void Ray, don't actually see the Stargate, but I saw what I needed to see. I saw 3 gateways and a robo going down. That's indicative he is not on double Stargate. Also, just 1 Void Ray responding to my Overseer. Also clues us in on that. So at this point, we're building up a little bit of a gas float. And hopefully that doesn't get too far out of hand, but with where we are losing some Overlords here, that can happen. This is something that I'm more and more trying to work on, because I've found if you lose more than, you're going to lose your blocking Overlord, 1 or 2 blocking Overlords, and if you lose anything more than that, it actually can cause a pretty significant gas float, since you're also investing in Queens as well. And that obviously delays then your Swarm Host timing, because that gas should be spent on Swarm Hosts. So we're taking our 3rd here. We're just very slightly ahead on economy, and that's really all we need. We actually can be equal economy and be pretty happy, but a little bit of an advantage is nice. Alright, so we see Barcode going ahead and taking his natural. That still feels loud. Nope, it's not. Okay. Just turn it down on my headphones. So, he's going to go ahead and take his 3rd, and we will go into a pretty healthy macro game here. Now, when this finishes, we're probably even going to see, yep, there's 8 drones. So, just getting enough drones that I can get a little bit of mining there. Now, one thing I forgot to do is pull some drones off of my main. Maybe even a few. Nah, my natural's fine, but I should have pulled 8 or so drones off my main. This is inefficient. Fix that. I've been really sloppy about that lately. Back in beta, I was really reliably cleaning that up, making sure that when my 3rd finishes, I equalize my mining and get everything at 16, but I've gotten pretty lazy with that, so I'll have to make sure to keep an eye on that moving forward. Alright, so, speaking of moving forward, we have, let's go ahead and get the unit count up here, just 3 Swarm Hosts for now, and that's where we were running low on minerals there. We've got some extra drones over here on that 3rd. We're going to be able to go ahead and get that cleaned up, but imagine if there was 9 more Swarm Hosts right now, rather than in a few minutes. He would be losing the game outright right now. So that's something we need to keep an eye on, because I've been kind of mentioning a number of ways that I kind of botched my early game mineral management, losing a couple extra Overlords, and then also not getting that transfer as healthy as it needed to be. We're at 21 now, so that's not too terribly bad. But still, I'd like to have my main at 16, and then if my 3rd high saturation, if anything, since that's going to be the latest to mine out. So at this point, we're still going to be able to do some damage. I maybe could have even scooted up a little more aggressively, since I did see Void Rays and I do have a very healthy Queen count. I probably could have pushed up 1 spawn sooner. Any quicker than that's going to be an unnecessary risk, but I could be doing a little more damage. I could have had 1 spawn before that Colossus arrived, which is pretty good. Cannon almost dead. Hopefully we get that cleaned up here shortly, but looks like... oh, there they go. Down it goes. I always hate to see a building skate by with just a sliver of health, and then recharge all of its shields. Really feels terrible when it happens with a Nexus. You've got a Nexus down to 5 health and full shields, and you just feel like a moron. Alright, so good force fields. He actually did not lose anything from that spawn, I believe. So that's phenomenal. Now he lost a lot of force field energy, so he's basically just buying time. And while that's going on, you want to do this anytime you see force fielding, actually, because that's actually indicating they don't intend to be aggressive. Because... so basically, I read he wasn't aggressive, and I went ahead and got up and cleaned up that forge, cutting off his upgrades. And the reason I knew he wasn't going to push out is because when he force fields, he's not going to walk over his force fields into the locus. So, by nature of how force fields work, he doesn't want to stomp on them with his Colossus to then be aggressive. So the moment you see someone throwing down force fields, go ahead and scoot up to his natural and snipe his forge, because cutting off that upgrade is great. A lot of times you're going to end up with 2-2 to their 1-0, or maybe 2-2 to 1-0-1, and that kind of upgrade advantage is so good for Locust. Alright, so getting a little bit aggressive here, hoping I could maybe snipe a Void Ray or a Mothership Core, but he actually was really good with that management. We do see we're developing a bit of an efficiency advantage here. And I'm at 72 drones. That's decent. That's about where I want to be. A couple over where I want to be. I'd say these days I'm very comfortable with 70 drones. 60 sometimes feels a little too low, but 70 treats me really well, allows me to comfortably remax if I lose my army in the late game. So right now we are actually supply blocked, so we're getting that cleaned up with Nice spam of overlords. Got a couple stalkers with that spawn. I'm always happy when I can just get a few stalkers with a locust spawn. They're so expensive. And notice we're just kind of gradually scooting back. He's now started to trade directly with the locust rather than force fielding, which indicates he's going to try and push forward. So we're just being cautious, trying to keep him walking into them. This one we got, good lord, 4 or 5 stalkers and a sentry. Great spawn. Let's see where those losses are at for him now. We're now about 4-1. So it's not looking so good for our barcode. But as you know, this is a 42-minute game, so anything could happen. So he's scooting up top, and I'm undecided as to whether I want to defend or attack in this situation. Since he had Void Rays, more than likely, no! Okay. More than likely, I want to probably defend, because he can always pull off his Void Rays and an Observer and clean up all my Swarmhosts. That little suicidal Swarmhost thing, I've tried all the methods that have been posted. Some of them are really good, but I find they tie up my actions more than 1 Swarmhost, 2 Swarmhosts per game is worth. Oh, there's that misselect again. Oh no, that was actually deliberate. I thought he was pushing forward. Turns out he's just scouting with a single stalker. But I thought he was going up to cut off my 4th, so I was hoping to intercept that. We have a Warp Prism scooting over here, but as we see, I'm already very well defended. Let's see where my economy is at now. 65 drones, still not doing too bad. After spamming out a bunch of spines and spores, and after we've capped out at 200 supply, I'd say 65 is very healthy. 70 is fine too, but definitely not 72 where we were at before. It's weird I talk about it like it's such a big deal, but it really is. You'll feel it. If you're at 75 drones, you'll just feel it because your locusts aren't doing any damage, and you'll only have 16 of them rather than, you know, upwards of 20 to 24. In this case, 21. Alright, so here's that Warp Prism harass, which is just so important. Especially when he's, you know, in this case behind. He is technically behind if you look at this, because I have quite a bit banked, and we're about equal supply. So he is behind in a couple ways. Obviously, unit efficiency. And now the one thing that's really tricky here is my swarm hosts are out of position. Actually, that Warp Prism pulled me way out of position. And this was a game that I had pretty well locked down, I felt. I mean, this is something where it was just hands down in my favor. And these are going to get some good hits here. It's always fun to do when you see Colossus advancing a little too aggressively. You can go ahead and just move command your Locusts, and you'll actually get a snipe or 2 on those Colossi, rather than killing Stalkers. So really, this is my best course of action at this point. He caught me. In a perfect world, my swarm hosts would have been up here. I would have been able to easily meet them with my Queens and Hydras, but instead he cleaned up good half of my swarm hosts and equalized our losses, for the most part. Catching a few more units here on my way, on his way out, and we're going to go ahead and play a little further into the game here. But yeah, those Void Rays absolutely paid for themselves at that point. And that's something that a lot of players have been asking about is, well, how do I deal with Void Rays? Because I've noticed some people say, and this is my feeling, that Void Rays generally aren't very good against Swarm Host Queen. Other players are saying, oh my god, I get rolled every time. And the reason is because one of two things. Either A, they're missing transfusions when they directly engage the Void Rays, which just is a straightforward fix your transfuse micro situation. Ooh, this is bad. I didn't even know I did this. That's so bad. Oh, he's going to let him go. Okay, I was going to say, that would be really sloppy. Where was I? Oh, yes. Either A, they're missing transfusions, or B, wow, he's the lucky one. B, they are letting their swarm hosts get caught out of position. And Void Rays are so quick to kill swarm hosts. I mean, they activate that whatever overcharge raffle stomp beam, I don't know what to call it, and you know, they'll melt 20 swarm hosts in you know, 30 seconds, 15 seconds, probably even less than that. It feels like a long time, but it probably isn't. And so you got to make sure when you see Void Rays that you don't allow yourself to get caught out of position like I did there, because that's what put him back in this game. All right, so trying to get some grabs here, but he's really quick on the feedbacks. And then there's been a couple barcodes that we've noticed have been stream sniping me, or map hacking, one of the two. I mean, really blatant stuff. And I was wondering if this was one of them. So, I mean, he's hitting all those perfectly, but at the same time, he's been later on in the game I noticed there were some times he was, flying warp prisms into my Hydras, so I don't think that was the case. But, I mean, these feedbacks were just spot on. The moment I got in range, he was hitting them. Alright, here's where that transfuse micro saves the day. We're just allowing those locusts to fill up about half of our surface area, while the Roach Hydra Queen fills up the rest. Now, we are way behind on supply, so I need to get that fixed ASAP. I do have plenty of resources sitting around. There we go, I'm getting some of that spending. Hopefully we've got some queens on the way. That's one thing I need to also keep in mind is not to discontinue my queen production. When there's a lot going on, because Zerg don't have a queen rally point, I find I get a little lazy and say, I'll just make roaches instead for my mineral dump. But the truth of it is, in a situation like this, there's no excuse whatsoever to not be spamming out those queens. And I do get that caught on, so here we go, there's some queens. But it's just, I could have had one full queen spawn in the time I was just talking about that. So that's indicative that it needs to be my first reaction rather than my, second or third. This is actually a great engage for us. The Hydra spawned in a flanking position, caught those Void Rays and Stalkers out of position a bit, and the Colossus were mostly firing at queens and locusts. So that's really good. He did eventually start focusing some Hydras, which is a great choice on his part. These Vipers are suicidal. Yeah, I have no idea what my intention there was. But, yep, down go a few Vipers for free. So, nothing I can say about that except for that I'm terrible at this game. So we've got still a supply deficiency, but I thought this was kind of funny. I actually watched the replay immediately after this game because it was just so intense. Check that out. We are down in supply, but we are way up in army value. Almost double their mineral value. Now, the reason for that is our drone count is actually dwindling, and his probe count is actually way too high. There's no way he's efficiently mining with all of that. Let's see where those are at. 98 is just excessive. He's got too many. No, he doesn't. Actually, he's just going hog wild on the economy. So that's one way to go about it. He's mining so much that he can continue to take these cost-inefficient trades and still reproduce and try to overwhelm. So that's, a very cool approach. I don't know if necessarily he wants that, though, because it means he has so much less supply to work with. Again, with that, just precision feedback, the moment I'm in range. I mean, I lost a Viper to basically not do anything to that Colossus. It was already in the red previously. There's a freebie there. Didn't realize he was going to push forward so quickly. And this is the thing, is I think part of it is he needs to be more patient with this game, because every time he pushes forward, I get a decent trade. Just have to keep scooting back. Going to have to sack this fourth, or I guess it's my fifth. Although we do have a Warp Prison up top, but it looks like it got dealt with. I'm not going to be able to cast all of this because it plays out very much like a ZVT as this game goes on. So the High Templar are out of energy, and it's my time to clean up a little bit. He goes ahead and dumps everything into Queen feedback since they're going to die anyways. Great choice. I get a reset on his Colossus count for the most part, and that's so helpful for me. All the while, we've got tons of Zealots warping in down here. No charge quite yet. This, I think, would really be paying off by now. I think a lot of Protoss players need to make sure they have charge the moment they go for warp-ins like this. 100 probes, that's definitely too much. I mean, granted, it's allowing him to keep dumping all these minerals into harass to pull my army back, and a lot of times he's not actually doing any significant damage for those, 1,000 minerals per warp cycle. But I just feel like if he wasn't on 100 probes, he would probably be able to have enough army to clean up. Vice versa, if I wasn't on 37 drones, I would probably be able to remax. So, maybe we both had opposite problems with our economy. It's just up top he cleaned up a good 30 probes. Actually, let's check this out. This number's going to be interesting. Yeah, 36 workers killed for him so far. And that's not including all the spores and spines I've dumped drones into. We want production. That's not including all the spores and spines I dumped drones into, which I would say probably another 15 to 20 drones throughout the course of this game thus far. A good chunk of those have been cleaned up. There was a good 6 there, and he cleaned all those up. Alright, finally get this warp in cleaned up. Had a move command on those roaches, which wasn't so good. We've got a transition over to very, very late game Tempest. I like this choice actually from Barcode. It's gonna give him a little better cleanup on those locusts. Believe it or not, of air options, Tempest are probably the best. You know, that's pretty bad still, but it's not like carriers where if you're at 3-3 and they're not at 3-0 on their attack, the carriers just literally do not damage the Locust. It's like 2 damage per hit. Wasted spawn here. So that's not so good, but we're going to get some Zealots because he's looks like maybe mismicroing a bit. So that's something. Now he has no shortage of minerals, so he can lose Zealots all day long. At this point, he's just dumping minerals into buying more time for his High Templar to build up energy for another push, maybe to grab a few more Colossus as well. Or Colossi. More just perfect feedbacks. And that's the thing, is there was no Observer here, and this is where I still kind of go, you know, what's that all about? Because, I mean, he's like just hitting those perfectly, and I wasn't in range of the Xel'Naga yet when he started moving forward. But, I mean, you know, maybe he's just got the star sense and he knows what's up. So I'd just rather assume he's a really good player than hacking or stream cheating. So, he's back to that composition, but now he's got those Tempests, and I think that's actually, as late-game compositions go for Protoss, I would say the only thing he can improve on this is to include a Mothership. Motherships really do throw Protoss, or throw Zerg off, who are doing this, particularly with such good feedbacks, because I need to abduct the Mothership in order to get that shut down, because otherwise he's going to be able to also feedback Overseers and just snipe them in general. I'm trying more and more to get better at dumping my Overseer energy, but as we see there, not always perfect. Alright, so I'm scooting up top. There's that Warp Prism catch I was thinking of. It was just like a really blatant Warp Prism catch. And this, I felt I was obligated. I had to take a bit of a risk, but I needed this to go down. And as we see, I just barely get it cleaned up. He gets the cancel at the last minute, although he's got plenty of resources. He could have lost it anyway. And unfortunately, actually, I don't think I lost anything here now that I think about it, because I hadn't rebuilt it yet. Otherwise, we would see something still. Alright, so I'm cleaning up those Zealots up top while I go ahead and let those Locusts continue doing a little bit of work. Looks like they're actually going to get a little bit of damage on some Colossi. Got maybe a Zealot or 2 in there. It's kind of hard to even tell what's being lost. Let's check those losses. He's actually not as bad off as I would have hoped. And that's in a big part because of those Swarm Hosts going down so much earlier in the game. Got a couple good abducts there, but I lose about half of my Vipers. Not really the best trade. Also, Tempests are surprisingly tanky for how fast they are. 450 total health, and they're actually a fairly fast unit for a capital ship, so... I get a second grab there, finally clean up that Tempest. Anyone who's having trouble with Tempest, now this isn't mass Tempest, but given that he's got Colossi and High Templar, this is a pretty good composition. Anyone who's having trouble with Tempest, this is really how you have to do it. I mean, catch them on the retreat, catch 1 or 2 Tempests at a time. It's just got to be this really kind of incremental thing where you're just very gradually cleaning up 1 Tempest here and there. If you try and go in and just take out everything all at once, it's never going to end well. Alright. Warp Prism cruising by. He's keeping me taxed as much as possible with that multitasking. And all the while, he's still having fairly cost-efficient trades with these Locusts. As cost-efficient as you can get. This Colossus is a little too close, but he barely catches it. Just continuing to send over Zealots to try and buffer those Locusts. And I still really like this approach on his part. Just dumping those minerals. He's got so many drones, so much mining. He's down to now 70 probes. Looks like he's been trading them away. But he's got so much mining that, I mean, he can just trade minerals for the entirety of the game for my Locusts, which in turn allows him to continue pushing this really high gas composition at me. He just waits for a max on pure gas units and then pushes out. Really good engage here for me. I actually do like this a lot, even though I'm getting a lot of Hydras roasted, but I cleaned up all of his High Templar, and in the retreat I'm getting a lot of the Tempest, and for the most part I reset his Colossus count again as well, and that's just so important. I think if he ever had a point here where he was able to, like there he was at about 180 supply, if he had just 3 more Colossus in that composition, I would have been absolutely rolled. So it's really important that you keep their Colossus count, I would say under 6 if possible, but at all costs under 8. I feel like that's the point that your Locusts just absolutely start doing nothing. And that's where the Vipers have to do some work. But if they're really good on their feedbacks, then the Vipers aren't going to get much done either. Alright, so taxing me enough here. Now, in hindsight, I should have sacked this. This was just a production hatchery. This hatchery was so much more important. Now, this would have continued on to kill some of my tech, etc., etc. And I also could have just split up my army and dealt with both. But at this point, I got to be honest, I was a bit fatigued. I'd already played 5 or 6 ladder games, which I'm old, so 5 or 6 ladder games wears me out. So I was getting a little sloppy and letting everything go on one control group, or you know, even if they're on one control group, you want to just split off a few with a shift click sometimes to deal with that drop play. All the while, I'm just trying to make sure I keep him on the defensive with the locus. And that's super important. That's one thing that in this kind of game where your opponent's going really heavy with the warp prisms, when you are pulled back with your Hydra Roach Queen, make sure that the swarm hosts are still actively pressuring your opponent. Sometimes you're going to get some legitimate damage. You're going to take out a Nexus or some cannons or something. But more importantly, you're keeping their army pinned. You're making sure they're not pushing at, in this case, my pocket fourth. Because I'm losing that vertical repeatedly. And if I lose this pocket fourth, then I'm pretty much out of luck. I've got 3 mineral patches all almost gone. I'm mining on, let's see, 33 drones. Yep. One thing I really needed here was just to gradually replenish my drone count, but it just felt like I was just under constant harassment. It was just this constant cycle of warp in a ton of zealots, pull back my army, gradually build up a high gas army, push again, and it's just I've been under attack for the last 30 minutes straight, or 20 minutes straight. So I never really had a time when I said, oh yeah, let's make 8 drones. But I maybe could have snuck in 2 drones every so often to start getting economy or mineral income back where it needed to be. I was kind of wondering if I wanted to go ahead and push. I have the multi-prong going. It's not quite as equal as I'd like it to be. It's a little too heavy towards the bottom, which is allowing him to go ahead and focus all of his defense down there. But eventually I just decided, you know what, I see a whole bunch of probes with this army. I don't need to be pushing into this. I would rather let this wear him down as much as it's going to. Let it clean up those buffer probes that he's got going now. And so I figured time is on my side since he's to the point of pulling all of his probes. Or most of his probes at least. He's got about 30 at home still. Alright, huge engagement here. And he's going to get a great cleanup on these swarm hosts, but I've got a kind of a pseudo flank up top. He has good positioning back here. I maybe should have waited for him to step a little further, but nevertheless, I'm getting a pretty good trade here. Let's take a look at losses, see where it continues to go. Cleans up all of those swarm hosts down below. We have only 9 swarm hosts left, so really low count. He's got more than enough Colossus to deal with that. We've got 6 Colossus remaining, but he's a little light on the air units, so that actually means my queens are going to be pretty good because those Tempests were what were actually keeping my queens at bay. So my queens can push behind the Locust spawns and still do really well against these Colossus. Alright, getting a couple more grabs there. He's out of High Templar, so I'm finally able to do something with those Vipers before he gets them all cleaned up. And we have one more really good engage here for me, and that's going to probably be all she wrote. A few more High Templar coming back, and at this point, I mean, we're just so low on economy that I'm having to just make sure I don't waste anything, because he's still very much in this game until the very end. So I'm trying to just actually give my queens time for another transfuse, because at the very end of this, I mean, we've got 2 Hydras that are low that I actually need to transfuse. And so it's no longer the time when I can hold down my transfuse key and spam it out. There's the remainder of his probes. One last hurrah. At this point, I feel confident I can go ahead and do something with this, especially with the remainder of those probes pushing out. He's at 5 minerals, and he has 24 probes, but they're probably idle somewhere. He has no income right now. So there we go. Last of the Colossi finally getting cleaned up, and we're able to go ahead and deal with those Tempests since they're so low in numbers that I can transfuse through the damage. So, yeah, that game, just in the sheer back and forth of it all, obviously, in hindsight, the loss of those swarm hosts were really what put him back in the game. I felt like I had done so well up until that point, forcing some really bad engagements for him, that if I had had my swarm hosts rather than way down here, which felt really awesome, and if he hadn't been into Void Ray, would have been good. But since he was into Void Ray, I needed to have them right around here. They would have still been pushing him away. Maybe he wouldn't have done as good a damage with the Locust spawns, but I also wouldn't have lost 3/4 of my swarm hosts for free. So, alright, so that's it for this one. Thanks a bunch for watching, guys.